Okay, so we've been discussing our book, Callings, Finding and Following an Authentic Life, and as we move towards the back end of this book, which has been absolutely wonderful, Mary actually pointed out a book to me called The Path Made Clear by Oprah Winfrey, which actually validates a lot of what we have been looking at in our Callings book. And there is so much in this book. It's actually full of quotations from all sorts of different people from all different walks of life. Thomas More, Wintley Phipps, who is a black minister in Washington, Glennon Doyle, no, she's a Christian writer, Sister Joan Chittister, who's just, Nate Barkus, Brian Grazer. This book is full of the most, Carolyn Miss, Deepak Chopra, the most amazing little snippets.
It's a book full of little quotes.
Yes, it's basically full of little contributions from all these different people. And it's absolutely amazing. I couldn't, as I was reading through it, I was like, oh my, I need to say that. Oh my, I need to say that. You know how it goes. And she says right at the beginning that the reason for this book, The Path Made Clear, is your life is not static. Every decision, setback, or triumph is an opportunity to identify the seeds of truth that make you the wonderful human being that you are. I'm not talking just about what you do for a living. When you pay attention to what feeds your energy, you move in the direction of the life for which you were intended. Trust that the universe has a bigger, wider, deeper dream for you than you could ever imagine for yourself. This sets the tone for the most wonderful things in there. Some of this has really validated what we've already been talking about. As Sue Monk Kidd said, I think life is a process. You wake up, then you wake up some more. One self dies, another is born. It's an evolution of consciousness. If you look at the way God created the world, it's always about a seed and a sprout and a flower, and then it goes back to a seed. It's about process and unfolding. We're on a journey of greater and greater consciousness, becoming more compassionate, more loving, and that is a lifelong spiraling process.
That's awesome.
Isn't that wonderful? So anyway, it's been there's so much in this book that, as I say, I read through and it was like, oh, I need to remember that. Oh, I need to remember that. And I yes, Jan.
Did she choose the writings or did she ask for contributions?
I don't actually know. She has several of these wonderful little books that are full of quotations. Karen and Shirley gave me one that was from her Super Soul Sunday, that whenever I feel like my energy is depleting, I just dip into that, and it's full of the most amazing things. Elizabeth Gilbert is in here. Everybody that you can think of is in there. And then I've forgotten what I was going to say. That is okay. That is okay. There are no accidents. Obviously, you didn't need to hear what I was going to say. Moving right along.
I was hoping you were going to say, you win a car.
Nice try, Stephen. Anyway, so as looking at this, going back to where we were about saying no to calls, a lot of it is, again, it's confirmed in this other book that we receive these calls. We don't just receive a call. We're not getting one call. We're getting a multitude of calls. And as we grow and evolve spiritually, then the calls change and differ and keep coming. They don't stop, guiding us as we move forward on our path. And as we're talking about here, saying no to calls, he was actually going on, and I'm not going to read it because the first part of it, because it's quite lengthy, about how he kept getting calls and calls to write essays, and he kept avoiding it and trying to move away. And he began to wonder, why did he keep saying no to this? And he said, the following revelations began to dawn on me in rapid, nauseating succession. I feared that in writing those essays, I might find out I wasn't the person I imagined myself to be. Not writing them kept me at a safe distance from the possibility of such a discovery. Some of the stories I wanted to write would necessitate that I awaken sleeping giants that I didn't want to disturb. In order to write with any authority, I would have to relive some of my past. Some of the stories were about things better left unsaid, things that would blatantly disregard the admonition of my elders, who taught me that if I had nothing nice to say, then say nothing. My proclamations would not be welcome everywhere. Unlike the articles and how-to books I'd written previously, essays, being in the first person singular, would require confessing rather than preaching. I was suffering too from what the composer Stephen Nachmanovich, in his book Free Play, calls the fear of ghosts. This is the impotence that comes over us when we compare ourselves to our own heroes, whether they are parents, teachers, mentors, or, as in my case, the geniuses in my own field and the heroic image of my own ideal self. In contemplating the size of these gladiators, in weighing the strength I have against the strength I need, as the poet Philip Larkin once wrote, I came up with a negative balance and so shrank from the challenge. Finally, I hated the thought of being a beginner again, especially after years of building up my journalistic skills to the point where I had some mastery of writing articles and was finally earning enough to give me something worth stealing. On more than a few occasions, when the calling to write essays began breaking through my resistance like damnable green buds through cement, in dreams, fantasies, symptoms, synchronicities, slips of the tongue, and a constant and ineradicable irritation with my writing, I threw the workaholic's version of a tantrum. I worked double time on the articles, hoping to steamroll the new calling, hoping to prove the worth of the status quo. This approach failed miserably. And I think he makes a very good point here, that this is why many times we actually say no to callings that are persistent, and we of course keep pushing it back. This fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. Yes.
Well, that makes me think, I have the fear of being successful and it'll change my life, and I love the life I have.
Uh-huh.
So my fear is that I will sell millions of children's books and, be on Oprah, and then I can't get back here on Sunday. It's part of it.
Yes, absolutely it is.
Or maybe that it doesn't work and nobody wants to read about a cute little dog. Now, how could that happen? But yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Dean.
You know, I found the comment about essays. I resonated with my own life because in my 60s I started on a master's program and in consciousness studies, which required psychology and religion and philosophy, and I entered upon writing essays about my early life and looking at things I'd not looked at in 50 years and feeling feelings I hadn't felt in 50 years and got to re-examine those and pull that out of me. It was very cathartic, it was very healing, it was very difficult, it was not easy
Right.
to write about myself, especially the fears and the traumas and the dramas and the
Yes.
but I had already entered upon that undertaking, so I pushed myself to go forward, and it was a calling in a way, but that writing helped me.
Yes.
But you have to dig deep and feel the pain.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Michael, I thought you wanted to say something.
No, I really don't have anything to say.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought I saw
But he
you.
got a calling.
I thought I saw you indicate that you were going to say something. No, but I think this is the case. It is this fear of having to dig deeper. It's this fear of having to look back at things that we have buried pretty deep to get rid of them. That is actually fearful to us. And the other thing is this comparison thing. All the time we are comparing ourselves to others, and all the time we are looking at what what others have done and making comparisons with what we want to do. And many times we just use that as an excuse not to move forward. Yes, Akhilesh.
So as you said before, I think every time we talk about callings, I think we have to be careful not to let our ego interfere with our calling. So in a way, it's almost like, again, does following your calling make you special? Does it make you better than if you didn't follow your calling? Does it? So I think these are all things to think about, because
Yes.
chasing your ego, is and thinking you found your calling, that might not be the best path for spiritual development.
I think that is a really, really good point. That we have to be careful that the following of the calling is not completely ego driven.
And actually, I just want to elaborate on that. So if you think about dharma, which is just a path that you follow.
Yes.
It's not. It's things you're expected to do, but it's not something that comes from your ego, but it's things that you do.
Right.
And if you do your, as the Gita says, if you do your dharma without any thought of reward or punishment, then you are on the road to progress.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you don't have an attachment to the outcome, as we talked about before.
And also not attachment to the task itself.
Yes.
Because that's the
And I
problem.
think that is a really interesting point. There's no attachment to the task.
Which is very
And I think that this is what this book Callings is actually in many ways all about. That the callings come in many ways and shapes and forms. And I think the ones that appeal to our ego will be the ones that we are tempted to say yes to. And the ones that actually our ego doesn't like, those are the ones that we say no to. Yes, Kathy.
For me, it's been absolutely the opposite of that. Since embarking on this mediumship journey, I've had a lot of fear about, can I really do this? Is this really happening? And then I feel the urge to enroll in another psychic fair or to do another thing or do another reading or whatever. And if I go a long spell without doing any work, I go, oh, what if I've lost it? What if it isn't here anymore? But when I'm doing the work, I'm totally out of my ego, which is it's very gratifying to see other people benefit from the reading. And it's very like going on vacation from your own self to leave and go do these readings. And you can't be in your ego and do a good reading. But there's the ego comes back in when I'm not following the calling, when I'm not doing the work, when I'm going, oh dear, can I really do this? Are you kidding me? And then when I surrender and do the work, it's like, oh yeah, I can still do this. I'm supposed to do this. It just happens. But I have to surrender the ego to do the work.
You know,
Completely.
Yeah, Achilles.
Yeah, I think there's an important point. I think there's a fine line between attachment to what you're doing and it feeling right.
Right.
So I think if it feels right, it's fulfilling your path. But
Right.
the attachment to it, I think that's the fine line.
Yeah,
Which
I
Kathy
think
talked
that's a really good point. There is a very fine line between that. Yes,
I
Shelley.
think too, for me, one of the things that stood out was accepting that there are multiple callings. Because for me, whether it's egotistical or not, I've always attached meaning to calling. What is that assignment?
Right.
And that in and of itself conjures up all of these fears of vulnerability and responsibility.
Yes.
You know, that is so massive
Yes.
that then it's easy to become paralyzed if you have this massive calling or assignment to the world.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's ego or if that's, again, part
And
of
in
the
some
I'm
ways
not
it's
enough issue.
interesting. In some ways I think that is ego. And it comes back to this, setting standards based on goalposts that you have set depending on, mentors and parents and what have you. And so in some ways it is this fear of not being able to meet or match those expectations. And I think that many times that is to do with ego, whether we like it or not. Achilles.
I think the level of ego in any task or any undertaking is measured by determined by your intent. So if your intent is to just be of service without hope of reward, then there's no ego. But if your intent is to get some kind of reward out of it, then that's ego, right?
But what I'm asking though is like the perfectionism that comes up. So is that ego? Because it feels like perfectionism to me, because you're saying maybe I shouldn't go any further with this. It feels very scary.
And that's a really interesting point, because perfectionism is totally fear-driven, I believe. It's the fear of not being
No,
good
and I'm
enough.
sorry,
Yes.
I don't mean to hog the bandwidth here, but
No, you're doing great. Go for it.
but again, to me, I think you can be perfect. You can try to be perfect in a flow activity, like the Zen masters try to be perfect in archery or kendo or something like that, and that's fine, because that's again, I think it's the intent. Why do you want to be perfect? Why do you want to perfect an activity?
Okay, all right.
The why is important.
Because of the perception of what a calling is. That's what I'm saying. It all goes back to, I think, on a conscious level, thinking this is such a massive assignment. Maybe on a
Right.
subconscious level, there's the I am not enough, issue.
Right. Interesting. Jason.
So you read an excerpt out of the Oprah book
Yeah.
about following your highest energy
Mm-hmm.
and it expanding in a spiraling type of
Right.
effect. I think the ego we talk about masking feelings.
Yes.
I think the ego masks that energy with fear.
Uh-huh.
As soon as I get that high energy to go forward, all of a sudden it's like panic or
Right.
some sort of way an ego tries to
That's interesting.
stop me. It's like, wait, okay, that energy looks great, but you could.
Yes.
I don't know.
Jan.
I think a good judgment of whether it's ego-driven or not might be if this thing that we're doing that we think is a calling were taken away from us, how would we feel?
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
How would we feel if it were
Yeah.
gone? Would we feel?
That's interesting. John.
Relieved.
Yeah.
Empty.
Hang on, hang
You
on.
gotta start any task or activity. I mean, inertia, you have to begin.
Right.
So maybe the ego is just another tool to get you moving.
Ooh,
And then
that's
maybe you lose yourself after you get rolling.
that's a really interesting point.
I like
So
that.
do we need the ego to give us the impetus to get on and follow the calling? That's a really good question. Bonnie.
Well, I've been following a calling
Uh-huh.
lately, and it's going really well on writing. Where my insecurities lie is the lack of education in that area.
Uh-huh.
But I came to realize that my life is my education,
Absolutely.
and the writing just flows.
Uh-huh.
And I'll edit myself, probably too much, but
Yeah.
over and over again, and it'll take a while for it to be ready. But what I wrote in my little blurb of things I'm writing is that when you're a child, you're almost pure, a baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
You're a pure spirit.
Right.
But we need the ego to survive in this world.
Yes.
We absolutely need it. But when the spirit is heavier than the ego, we're out of balance. When the ego is heavier than the spirit, we're out of balance. When they are in harmony,
Yeah.
is our best selves.
That's actually a nice way of looking at it. That, it's totally a balanced issue. But I think, and I like what John said, that sometimes we actually need the ego to give us the impetus to get started. But then, what the result is determined by whether or not the ego or the spirit is out of balance. Jan.
I keep going back to this. It's the yin and the yang. The yang is the impetus that gets us going. The yin is the creative part of it, and you have to have both to be able to do anything. You need that boost of yang
Right.
energy
Well-
to get you going, and then
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and I mean this
vice
is
versa,
the whole thing about masculine and
balance.
feminine energy that we all have within us. This is the thing. It's the female feminine energy is nurturing and caring and nice.
it's not.
Yes.
I don't see it as. I'm sorry. Don't see it as feminine and masculine. I see it as.
Good and evil?
No, love or action maybe. No, we all have it, and if you're in yang energy and you're out chopping wood, that doesn't make you masculine. If you're in yin energy and you're holding a baby or petting a puppy, that doesn't make you feminine.
Oh,
It's
absolutely
just
not. But I
the
think
same-
also the definitions of masculine and feminine energy are so totally misinterpreted.
That's what I'm
They
saying.
are completely about balance.
That's what I'm saying.
Akhilesh, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying, so this concept of duality pervades our existence. We can't escape it in this existence.
Right.
Whether it's, you can call it masculine, feminine, or energy and consciousness,
Yeah.
where energy is typically the feminine part, and also in Hinduism called Shakti, and Shiva is the consciousness, that's
Right.
the male part. So I think this concept of duality is, we cannot escape it in this life.
Right.
But you have to decide, do you want to think about it and try to liberate yourself from it, so that, do you want to keep coming back? Now
Right.
this comes from, and that's okay if you do, there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
Because-
good point.
Because ultimately when you make that jump, you have to, it shouldn't matter. Because the minute it starts mattering, you can't make that jump, right?
Right.
So that's the sort of paradox there. But like if you look at the Vedant, which is all the teachings that go at the end of the Vedas,
Right.
which is what it means in Sanskrit, the end of the Vedas. all they do is think about duality.
Right.
And they talk about how to sort of get around that.
Right.
But it pervades our existence. We cannot get around it.
Absolutely, and in many ways I think that is exactly why we came here,
Yeah.
is to experience the duality. Now what's happened is that we've actually allowed this duality, the duality consciousness, to pervade society. And it's only been recently that we're beginning to understand unity consciousness is actually where we all need to end up. But by the very nature of this existence, we can never ever get away from duality. It is there. Yes, Barbara.
It is there, but what we are moving from is our three-dimension life, as we know it, into the fifth dimension.
Yes.
And that is the dimension of non-duality. That is the dimension of the oneness and the unity.
Right.
So, as we are living it now, but it is we are also moving away from it into the consciousness of oneness. Otherwise, we're not moving.
Well, right. I believe we're moving towards it, but I believe as long as we are on this plane, we can't ever escape.
But I think that the phrase heaven or earth as it is in heaven, that phrase, that's what that means.
Yes.
That this earthly plane move into the heaven realm.
Right, as Di just said, as above, so below.
Yeah.
So that, yes, we move closer. But I don't think that you can ever fully get there from this existence. Akhilesh, you wanted to say something?
Okay, sorry, Kathy.
Yeah, no, Kathy, she was after you.
That's okay, yeah.
I gotcha.
You're in charge.
Kathy just seemed really eager, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I was just trying to cut in line.
So I was just saying that, I think when we look at our existence here, we tend to think of it as two existences, this and the other.
Yeah.
But actually there's many infinite existences out there that we experience when we sleep or,
Right.
just, so it's not just that we have this one. So, for example, as the solar system moves towards, as we go up the four epochs and as we get closer to this big black hole that, which is the navel of Vishnu, the quality of existence on this planet changes and we experience a greater sense of unity. But there's other existences that are already there where we experience different levels of unity. So, for example, when we die, we defocus from this physical existence, but our subtle body still experiences a sense of separation. We are not completely unified. It's not like after we die we'll be completely unified and it'll all be great.
That's interesting.
I think the ultimate goal is to go through different existences and then realize that there is only the underlying divinity, which is the Atma actually in those.
So I had a question in regard to what Barbara said about going from third to fifth. Remind me what fourth is.
Well, when we read the book by Ziad Masri, he suggested that the fourth dimension was basically a dimension of love, but of rebalancing. That the fourth dimension was where we found the balance between service to self and service to others. So
will we go through that first before we get to fifth?
Oh yeah, we're moving through.
Are we teetering on the edge of that now?
I mean, basically what he was suggesting is that we are moving through the fourth dimension, as we're in the third, and also as we get to the fifth, we'll still keep dropping back, moving forward. Because if you think about it, if there is too much, it comes back to balance again. If there is too much emphasis on service to others, this is usually to the detriment of service to self. And if there's too much emphasis on service to self, generally this means moving to bit towards selfishness rather than selflessness. Yes.
So beyond that, when we get to 5D, that's when we'll be the light body?
No.
Is that further on?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to remember, because I forgot since we
But
were
the
up
other
there a
thing
long
too
time
is,
ago.
it's like I said last week, you have to remember, enlightenment is not a destination. It's not a stop on the train, you know. I'm getting on and the next stop is enlightenment. Here we go.
I know that. I'm just trying to.
You got a map? I'd like to
It's-
see some things in enlightenment.
It's a constant and ongoing journey.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Right.
Enlightenment is not something that happens at a single point. Enlightenment is actually something that is happening constantly with each of the people that we are now. And as this self dies and a new self is born, then there is a new enlightenment. You see what I mean? It's a learning experience that is constantly ongoing. Yes, Dean?
Well, awakening begins, but it never ends.
Mm-hmm.
The mystical marriage is the marriage of the divine feminine, divine masculine,
Mm-hmm.
the union of the head and the heart,
Mm-hmm.
the union of love and wisdom.
Right.
So in the union of love and wisdom and the masculine and feminine, we walk on the middle path
Right.
in harmony,
Yes.
which is non-duality. A place of unity, recognizing that within each of us is the masculine and the feminine,
Yes.
and within good is evil, and within evil is good. That is all a oneness to the duality. It's a reconciliation of the duality into a understanding of unity.
Okay.
Being able to see that it's two ends of the poles.
It's like
rather
the-
than two separate things.
It's like an infinite
Yeah.
line,
Infinite.
and somewhere along that line you may determine this is good and this is evil, but
Right.
it's a personal discernment. In reality, it's non-existent.
Okay. Yes, Akhilesh?
I think the notion of non-duality, at least in the Vedanta, is a little bit different from that. Where, the first step is to realize that there is duality, of course.
Yes.
But when we are in this existence, when we are plugged in, there's no way to escape that. I mean, every
Right.
fabric, everything that we manufacture comes out of that. We pick a point on that line and then we do something with it. We are very full of consciousness or very energy, whatever. But ultimately, I think the goal is to realize what's beyond the duality.
Right.
So not just the activities we do here, but what is the real nature of our existence.
Right.
I mean,
It's a
our
synchronized
physical
universe.
existence is just one existence out of an infinite number of existences that are happening right now.
Yes.
And in each of them, we have different levels of quote-unquote enlightenment, as you said.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Stephen?
Well, let's throw in the word perception here.
Uh-huh.
Because there is no absolute evil without the good. In other words, say you murder somebody, but you do it to save 100 people. That was a good act, a hero. So,
Yeah,
in
but-
everything,
This again though, and you see this notion, I think what Akhilesh is saying is that if you understand that the duality is a stick, and at one end of the stick is masculine, the other's feminine, the other one end is good, the other end is bad.
well, I'm not saying good or bad. I didn't say that.
No, I know you didn't. But do you see what I'm saying? But then as you transcend that, you realize there is no stick. That is moving to unity consciousness.
it becomes a circle.
A spiral.
No, I don't. A spiral, yeah.
A dot.
A dot is another. Yeah.
Actually, in the end, from my understanding, which is very limited in this existence, in the end there is nothing. There's just
That's
there's
the
just
point
the-
I was
the
trying to
atma.
get to. It's not a circle.
Nothingness.
It's not a dot.
There's
It's
no
not a
circle.
spiral.
It just
It's
is.
nothing.
It just is.
Ineffable.
That
Nothing
in
and
nothing
everything.
is
Everything.
everything.
That's correct.
So where do we want to go? We want to go to nothing.
Yes.
Then we will have.
Well, again in Hinduism, this is called Brahman.
Right.
Brahman is the fabric of our existence.
Yes.
That's what it is. And one of the big aphorisms that comes out of the Vedas is Prajnan and Brahman, which means consciousness is everything. So, in other words, everything that we look at in this existence
Right.
comes out of consciousness.
Yes.
But it's just a dream within a dream.
Well, life is but a dream. Yes. Yes, Janet.
How does that help us with discernment of the calling or application of the calling?
Well, because I think it is that it's coming to this place of realizing that the callings are all opportunities for us to move towards our limited notion of duality, and every calling is an opportunity that is moving us forward towards understanding the unity consciousness, I believe. And we do that by stripping back the layers of ourselves till we get to the most vulnerable part of our being. And the most vulnerable part of our being then allows us to see that we are one with everybody. Nobody escapes.
So inherently that should alleviate the fears that are preventing us from stepping into our calling.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It should, but
Personality gets involved.
but that's the whole thing. Yes, Steve.
Something I experience in spiritual teaching and writing and speaking is the feeling of being nothing and everything at the same time, and being invisible, and that like a pitcher filled with water, the wisdom flows through me, but it's not of me, I'm an instrument.
Yeah.
It's like I have no objective, no goal, no reward. I'm not seeking any attention. It's just I'm a vessel, and I'm an instrument, and it's a state of almost like being invisible.
Okay.
It just
And I think if you can get there, then, that's wonderful. I think we are all striving to follow these callings that we're getting so that we can get to a place of altruism, let's say altruism, that we are doing just because we are doing. Yes, Kathy?
It's more than altruism, though. It's becoming just the conduit. It's like you're nothing while you're doing the work. You're just being, like Dean said, you're being the vessel. I was going to say the word that came to mind earlier that I think is what we are all striving for is to be fluid, have fluidity, to be in our nature, in the way we view the world, the way we experience ourselves, our ego, our spiritual life, is just to remain fluid, just like the river, and just go over the rocks and around the rocks and just keep flowing. Flow. In the flow. Fluidity.
That's very, very cool. And yeah, is it just fluidity? I mean,
I don't
yes,
know. What is it?
I think one of the things we should try to do is to not take ourselves too seriously when we do these things.
Yeah,
And
I
do
agree.
so essentially what I tell some people, what I do myself is just do something crazy that you think you would not normally do. Something that, like, maybe act the fool somewhere or do something that's, just do that.
She goes sing karaoke sometime.
Yeah, that's really crazy for me to sing karaoke because I suck at singing. I've done it, but I need to be drunk. But yeah, just I think just do something crazy where you realize that what you're doing is not that profound, because the minute you start thinking you're profound, you're already
right.
You're in the
There's actually a wonderful quote in here, and this is from Wintley Phipps, who said, "I've realized that moments of destiny are moments for which you were created, but they're not the reason you were created. The reason for which we were created is to grow every day, to more resemble, reflect, and reveal the character of the one who created us. Let me tell you, God is the ultimate dreamer. And when he dreams, he also dreams about us. He dreams about you, he dreams about me, and the most amazing thing that can happen in the life of a human being is to catch a glimpse of what God's been dreaming for you.
Who wrote that?
Isn't that lovely? What?
Who wrote that?
Phipps is his name, Winkley Phipps. He's I think he's like the Bishop of Church in Washington. So, yes, whichever church. And that actually is a wonderful place at which we shall end this morning.